And this quote, there's entertainers and there's competitors, and I totally understand that. It's my job to compete. That quote was taken wildly out of context over the course of the weekend. If there's anything I've learned in my years, I will credit my friend and longtime coworker, Sarah Spain. The first time I started working with Sarah Spain, she said, every time you see an answer, ask what the question was before you react to it. This is the greatest example of that we've seen in a minute, Caroline, because social media was blowing up that Dillon Gabriel threw shade at Shedeur Sanders. From the outset, it was clear he didn't. This is part of what I hate about the way that we are covering the Browns, the way we are searching for drama. We are desperately trying to make it Dillon Gabriel, the human being, versus Shedeur Sanders, the human being. Caroline, it's not that at all.
I mean, this would not be the first time that there was a quote taken completely out of context and slapped on a graphic, and then it made its rounds on social media. And look, if you don't want to seek out the context, you are not going to. And I don't think it's the obligation of the everyman or any sports fan to make sure that they say, okay, was the context correct? Because that's not how social media works, unfortunately. I was with you that I saw the graphic first, and I thought, whoa, that's a very strange and bold thing for Dillon Gabriel to say. But then I saw the entire clip. And I saw the sideline reporter and I listened to the sideline reporter's question, and she said, you gave some great wisdom as to how to quote unquote block out the noise. How do you do that? And that's when he said, there's entertainers and there's competitors, and my job is to compete. And when you hear the way that he said it, it doesn't sound like there was any shade being thrown or there was any sort of ill will behind that. I think that he genuinely meant, look, the talking heads on TV and people like us, their job is to have a really interesting debate on television and to, kind of have this shock jock kind of mentality, but they can talk about all they want to talk about. My job is to be a competitor. I can understand the connection that people are drawing, right? Because, Shedeur Sanders has songs on Spotify, and so much of Colorado football was the flashiness of it all. There's nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of players and teams and coaches and sports that are incredibly flashy. There's nothing wrong with that. So I can see the connection being drawn there. But I understand that maybe Dillon Gabriel could have used his words more carefully, that maybe it's a little bit of naivety of him saying this and not acknowledging some connections that people could draw. But I think that's kind of a testament to all of these narratives being made up about Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel and maybe the rivalry that may or may not exist between the two. Those are just narratives that we on the outside are cooking up to where he can't even draw that connection from the inside because it's a connection that doesn't even exist. Could he have used his words more carefully? Yes, absolutely he could have. And by the sounds of his press conference there, it's probably a learning lesson for him because he sounded pissed that he even had to talk about it. But I don't think that it was any sort of shade being thrown. I don't think that there was any sort of, prickliness to what Dillon Gabriel was trying to say.
There is I think back to Josh Allen. The first time I ever interviewed Josh Allen, it was funny. You got like a pretty relaxed version of Josh, and he was pretty open and would tell you things. The 5th or 6th or 10th time I've interviewed Josh Allen in my career becomes, we're just learning how to get better as an offense. And we talk about coach speak all the time, quarterback speak all the time, where they're wildly vanilla. Caroline, they're vanilla because of things like this. Like, I don't think it's Dillon Gabriel's job to worry about his words. He answered the question correctly and was clearly throwing shade at the media. We just couched that in a different way. Not we, you, and I, but as a society, like, it's not Dillon Gabriel's fault that Twitter's too stupid to look for context. I can't sit here and back down from this concept of like the quote was put out there and people made it into Dillon Gabriel saying the wrong thing. Like, that's not a statement to what Dillon Gabriel needs to learn in my mind. That's a statement to what society needs to learn. Slow the hell down. Like, just this concept of, well, I read those words and it must mean this because that's what I think. That's what's wrong with the way we assimilate everything. We are now in this red zone society where you see 5 plays on a red zone game and you're like, well, that guy must have played his tail off because you didn't watch the rest of the game. Like, we want everything to be truncated into Cliff's notes if you're my age, Spark notes if you're your age, right? We want everything to be in this quick digestible format where we can suddenly make big sweeping judgments. Like, here's the real of it. Dillon Gabriel went out and played pretty well in that football game. He was okay. Mm-hmm. He had an interception that I don't pin on Dillon Gabriel because we don't know who ran the wrong route. 2 wide receivers shouldn't be able to play Kumbaya by the campfire in the same spot where a quarterback's throwing the football. Like somebody somewhere made a mistake there. We don't have the context to know that. So Dillon Gabriel played pretty well, but like I said last week, I'm maintaining consistency here. Shedeur Sanders played pretty well. I don't think that changes much. Dillon Gabriel played okay. I don't think that changes much. Like, we just don't have enough context on any of this, and that frustrates the world because the reality is everybody wants to talk about Shedeur, click on Shedeur. Our videos about Shedeur get views. So then everybody has to have a take on Shedeur versus Dillon, when the real take is like, maybe if we would all sit down, shut up, and wait, we'd actually get the answer by the way the entire battle plays out. We're just not willing to do that because this is bigger than a battle. It's now a sensation.
Yeah, I mean, but the based off of how they played, obviously the pick six, not great for Dillon Gabriel. I don't pin that on him. I always believe that every interception and every turnover has a different story. Sometimes it's the quarterback's fault, sometimes it's not, and I don't pin that one on Dillon Gabriel, but that is going to be a very bold demerit as we look at the box score of Dillon Gabriel that Shedeur Sanders did not have. That doesn't mean that Shedeur Sanders was perfect in his preseason debut. I mean, he ran backwards a couple of times in that game against the Panthers. You cannot run backwards in the National Football League. So both of these guys have looked like rookies at times, and both of these guys have shined and have shown us why they were desirable prospects in the draft process. But I'll go back to what you said about Dillon Gabriel, and we as a society need to find context. We as a society don't owe Dillon Gabriel anything, unfortunately. And I don't mean for that to sound harsh. I don't mean for that to sound like we shouldn't listen to what Dillon Gabriel has to say. But if we're putting the onus on the Joe Schmo on Twitter to go seek out context for a certain quote, I think that we're putting too much, we're giving them too much credit for what they might do. As a quarterback in the National Football League, whether you were a third round pick and maybe a backup, or a first round pick and a starter who just won the Super Bowl, you have to understand the impact of your words, especially when Dillon Gabriel is in a quarterback room that is under the microscope. You have to understand that anything that you say is going to be picked apart and cut into a million different little pieces and taken out of context. You have to cover your own ass. I think about what Ryan Tannehill said a couple of years ago. It's when I was in Nashville doing local sports talk radio in Nashville and covering the team. It was right after the Titans drafted Malik Willis. And Ryan Tannehill said, "It's not my job to mentor Malik." And that was the number one headline on every single sports media website. It was the topic of discussion on SportsCenter and NFL Live and all of these shows across America, picking apart what Ryan Tannehill said when it was taken out of context. And if you just read the graphic, that sounds pretty harsh, doesn't it? But when you listen to what he said, you realize, like, look, it's not his job to, pat him on the back and, mentor him every single day and break down the playbook. No, what his job is to be a leader, and Malik Willis can, learn by absorption and be a sponge and just kind of observe Ryan Tannehill. It's not Ryan Tannehill's job to go out of his way to make sure that every quarterback in that room is taken care of. And I use that example because I think it's the perfect example that at least comes to mind for me of quarterbacks have to be aware of what they're saying. That even though I agree with Ryan Tannehill, that's not his job. He has to understand the impact of his words. And I think Dillon Gabriel has to too. And every quarterback across America has to understand that what they are saying, the words coming out of their mouth and the words that may be printed on a social media graphic or in a newspaper have impact.
Joe Flacco is one that has also said the same thing. Not my job to mentor quarterbacks. Joe Flacco likely to be named the starter, right? Like, we're going to find out in the next couple of days. Kevin Stefanski said that he's going to name a starting quarterback this week so that we can figure out, what the process looks like. They can get in a rhythm going into the end of preseason. Caroline, it's clear. Like, this is all much Shedeur about nothing, right? Like, it is clear that Joe Flacco, who's been a bubble wrap throughout the entire preseason, is going to be the starter. So the only real question is who's going to be the backup, right? Again, I should remind everybody, the depth chart didn't change after the last preseason game. And while Dillon Gabriel did have the interception and a couple of other plays in there that I think he'd want back, I'm not sure the depth chart's going to change again. So we got 4 quarterbacks. We got Joe Flacco likely to be named the starter. I mean, are they going to carry 4 into the season?
Kevin Stefanski has said that, hey, look, we're comfortable carrying 4 into the season. I don't know if it's genuinely how he feels or if that's just, hey, I just want to kind of, put this to bed and not have that be the headlines and wondering, okay, which quarterback is going to be on the trading block. Say that again. Sorry, Fitzy.
Coaches never lie.
Oh, could you imagine a coach or a general manager, a front office person not being truthful? My goodness. In the NFL, I could never even imagine it. I can't believe they're going to carry 4 quarterbacks into the season. But let's just say Kenny Pickett, right? We haven't seen Kenny Pickett very much in the preseason. We haven't seen him in preseason games. If he really is dealing with an injury that is so bad that it'll keep him out for a month plus, then they can put Kenny Pickett on IR and then, upgrade either Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders as the backup, and then they can deal with it whenever Kenny Pickett comes off IR. So I don't think it's the craziest thing that they would carry 4 quarterbacks. It is pretty crazy, right? Like it does not, like most teams carry 3 max, so carrying 4 seems a bit superfluous. But I also don't think that the Browns want to put either Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in a position where, sorry, Joe Flacco's hurt. Go out there and win us a football game. So I do think they carry 4 quarterbacks, which just sounds weird, right? That sounds gross.
No, but I'm with you. Your logic is right. Like, I think there's a good chance if this hamstring injury persists for Kenny Pickett, they could put him on IR, which buys them some time. But realistically, again, Kenny Pickett has been number 2 on the depth chart every single time. So what have we seen from Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel? Like, remember, Shedeur's good game in the first game, which was a great game for him, did not move him up to 3 on the depth chart. So now what we saw from Dillon Gabriel, is that enough to juxtapose 3 and 4? Okay. But what have we seen that would put either of those players above 2 on the depth chart? I just think that's too far of a reach. I genuinely believe that the Cleveland Browns are going to carry 4 quarterbacks into this season. Again, I think Kenny Pickett could end up on IR, and that gives them a little bit of an opportunity.